the land of EWTN, all across the Lone Star State.
It's GRN Alive,
bringing you faith, fun, and facts.
Live from the studios of the Guadalupe Radio Network.
Join us on the show. Call
877-757-9424.
877-757-9424.
And good morning, and welcome to GRN Alive Friday edition, June 26, 2020, 12th week in Ordinary Time. It's, I think I always say this, it's beautiful where we are. You know, it's always beautiful in North Texas. Most of the time. I think last Friday was bad, but I was out of town, so I didn't notice it. Today is also the feast day of Saint Jose Maria Escrivá. I hope I pronounced that right. The founder of Opus Dei, the work of God. We welcome you to the show. Again, this is the Friday edition. We do this on Mondays and Fridays. Monday is from Houston, and Friday is here in North Texas, but we broadcast across the entire Guadalupe Radio Network. And so it's great to have you with us. We always appreciate your calls and your comments on the program. 877-757-9424 is our phone number, 877-757-9424. And as always, we welcome our other members of the team, Dr. Chris Malloy from the University of Dallas. How you doing, Dr. Malloy?
Very well, thank you.
Yeah, good to see you. It's been a while since we've had the show.
3 weeks. Huh?
Yeah. Last week I was, lying on the beach of South Padre Island.
It was 3 inches of rain here.
Well, it didn't get down there.
Good.
And so, anyways,
no man of war.
Some little squids, or what do you call them? Jellyfish.
Not
but
bad.
no man of war.
Okay,
no.
good.
They had these little things called button boys or something that were floating around. There's always something.
Yeah.
You know, you never go to the beach and it's just.
But you guys didn't get stung.
No, my daughter did. I don't know if it's a sting or kind of like an infection, but
Okay.
you always got to watch out for the rip currents and the possibility of some crazy shark or something.
Benson's College has been there.
There's no danger.
You're selling everybody on the beach, Dave, right now.
Well, the beach is safe. It's just when you get into the water, right? The beach, then you got the sun, and there's always something. Somebody kicking sand in your face.
That'll get you.
Yeah, and that is the voice of Sissel Anderson. How you doing, Sissel?
I'm doing well, thank you.
All right. Well, again, we welcome everybody. And, the week before that, we were doing the Share-a-thon. And this is the first time we've been on since the Share-a-thon. I know Joe thanked everybody on Monday, but thanks. It was a great. These days, you just don't know how things are going to go because it's still a little uncertain. And but we were just so delighted at the response, and it was great. So thank you very much. And we pulled the winner of the pilgrimage of choice with Select International Tours, and for I don't know how many times in a row, Dr. Malloy, it's not you.
Dang.
I'm sorry. I don't know what happened. Sissel, it's not you either. Chris Bully from McKinney, Texas. So we had a chance to talk to him yesterday, and he's very excited. He said there's been some, things going on in his life. It was perfect time for something like this. He said he's going to bring his wife. I said, that's
fantastic.
A good idea. Yes.
I guess for us to win, maybe Dr. Malloy and I should enter it next time.
Yeah, well, first you got to quit. You got to quit. You can't be an employee.
I know.
And then you got to make, the donation. So, it's up to you. The other thing I want to mention is we are looking for rosary missionaries to join us. And what you do is you just sign up on our website, grnonline.com. It's a brand new website, and we're asking you to pray with us every day. Just commit to a daily rosary. Many people are doing that anyways. And so if you're already doing it, say, well, okay, I'll join you in your petitions. We're praying for America and our world in this time of crisis, that peace may replace anger, violence, and resentment, for the conversion of hearts, for a cure for the COVID-19 virus that afflicts the world, and for our leaders in the church, our country, and our world to be led by the wisdom of the Holy Spirit. So, I think you signed up.
I just signed up, yeah.
How can you argue against that one?
Yeah, I know. So,
that's awesome.
Anyways, won't put any pressure on you, but if you want to sign up, Dr. Malloy.
It's okay, Dr. Malloy, but Dave and I already signed up.
And you get a little special.
Does your whole rosary have to be dedicated to this particular thing, or can you add it as an intention in your daily rosary?
I think God can do many things at one time. God can, you can just add it on, and you can even say for those intentions that
we
Palmer
speed
mentioned.
read our intentions. We have so many.
Right. And so join us. And again, grnonline.com, the whole website is updated and new. All right. Did you know this is Religious Freedom Week?
I did not.
Yeah, it is. I actually learned that on Catholic radio by listening.
Wow.
Okay, and I was thinking about this, months ago.
Internationally or U.S.?
I think it's U.S.
I think U.S. I think it's a U.S. CCB thing. And, months ago, I was talking to Diane about this. I think it was January, February. We had the group of men and women from Nigeria in studio with us. Were you here for that?
Yes.
And they're talking about.
That was fantastic.
I mean, it's crazy. People are literally dying and being killed on a daily basis
But no
in
one's
Nigeria,
talking about it.
and nobody's talking about it. And I was thinking that, right now you don't hear of people just being killed just for being Christian here in this country, but you do see some ominous signs of things going on. Toppling of statues of Christopher Columbus, of course, Andrew Jackson, George Washington, and now it's Saint Junipero Serra. And two of them toppled in California. There was a story I heard this morning about a couple of mission churches in California that had to remove their statues of Saint Serra because they're afraid they're going to be destroyed. Our Lady of Fatima Shrine in Buffalo reported $50,000 worth of vandalism. There's a group of Catholic youths who heroically stopped a California mob from tearing down Saint Serra's statue. I don't know if you saw that picture. It was young people.
Wow.
They gathered around the statue.
What city?
It was Ventura.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
Wow.
Ventura City Hall in California. I don't think they were armed or anything. Just young people saying nope, and they held them back. St. Anne Parish, the FSSP parish in San Diego, was threatened this week on social media. And that caused a big stir. And so I guess, the theme of this show and what I want to talk about, we got some outstanding guests is that I think the age of, easy-go-lucky Christianity is over. I think, most of us, I'm 53, most of my life, it's been pretty easy to be a Christian. Mm-hmm. And, you kind of, the biggest battle is maybe the Protestant that you have a debate about sola fide about at the office or something, like you're really bold if you're going to bring up that topic, but it's getting more serious now. And I talked to somebody yesterday and they said, we're going to have our St. Peter moment, where somebody says, are you a follower of Christ? It may not mean we get.
Quo vadis.
Yeah. What is it?
I'm going to Starbucks. Get some coffee.
Yeah, I mean, are you a follower of Christ? And what does that mean? What are the implications?
Where are you
and
going?
So Joe talked a lot about courage on Monday's show, and I think it's a virtue that's increasingly becoming necessary in our culture. And a friend of mine told me about this incredible, brave woman named Early Wiley. And she is currently serving as the criminal district attorney of Kaufman County in North Texas. And she's written a book called A Target on My Back. And the reason she wrote that is she literally was on a hit list. There's a guy who, and we'll discuss all the stories that happened in Kaufman County. Three officials in the district attorney office got killed. One of them in cold blood in public, walking to his work. The other two in their home. The district attorney and his wife killed in their home. And she ended up testifying against the killer and also taking the job of district attorney like a couple of months after this guy was convicted. And
she's got courage.
Most people are like, I'm out of there. I'm going somewhere else. And she was on a hit list. It came out later. This guy was going to kill a certain number of people, and she's on the hit list. She's also a Roman Catholic. She's a wife, a mother. She's the first African-American female district attorney of Kaufman County. And she is going to be joining us in studio here at the bottom of the hour. And so we're going to talk about that. And we're going to talk about the lawlessness in our culture today and ask her about her reaction to the George Floyd killing and, just all this. It's everything that's been going on. I mean, it's crazy right now, isn't it?
Well, it's a moment of decision. I kind of like it. In that regard, it's like we had to be quiet about our Catholicism.
Yeah.
But now they're forcing it in the open.
Right.
University of Florida, a kid was this president of the Senate.
Yeah.
And they voted him out.
Yeah.
Because he expressed his views privately.
Yeah. Just in a private text group. And it came out because I think he. And you heard about Timothy Gordon out in California. He lost his job teaching at a Catholic school because he said something disparaging about Black Lives Matter. All right, and also Jonathan Saenz from Texas Values is going to join us to talk about the Supreme Court decisions. There was one recently in the last couple of weeks where the 1964 Civil Rights Act now protects gay, lesbian, transgender employees from discrimination. And that has implications on religious liberty and the way that we just kind of carry ourselves in our Catholic faith or Christian faith. And so he's going to talk about that. Also, next week, they're expecting a case to come out involving abortion and also the religious liberty as far as Catholic schools and what's called the ministerial exception. So Jonathan's going to join us in a couple of minutes. I wanted real quickly, I sent you that article yesterday about the bioethics, gender identity, and biological sex are the new subjects covered in a Vatican Directory of Catechesis. And I know you didn't get a chance to read the 300 document.
In Italian.
In Italian. I'm so disappointed that you couldn't do that in half a day.
Mea culpa.
What's the gist? What's the gist of that? What's going on?
So they call it dynamic continuity. It's kind of interesting. It's a new phrase, right? So continuity with the past, but dynamic because there's new issues. So what are the new issues? Obviously, gender. This whole gender ideology is a new issue. Bioethical procedures, changes of one's organs, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I always wonder, what ages are listening. At any rate, so the gist is that it is faithful to the church's teaching, from what I can see, and again, I haven't read the 300-page Italian, faithful to the tradition on sex is your sex. Mm-hmm. Your biological sex is your sex. There's no gender that's opposite your sex, right? We talk about that. People can have experiences of confusion. That's called gender dysphoria. And that happens. And in fact, a lot of times it's happening because people are talking about it way too much. Mm-hmm. That's one of the issues. Then people get confused. But the document says we each have a task, a responsibility to cultivate our sex. And I look at it like we have to become men. We have to grow up from being boys to being men. Yeah. Women need to grow up from being girls to being women. We have to cultivate femininity and masculinity in proper ways. And of course, there's a range. Not every man is not the same, with a huge chest or whatever. Mm-hmm. But there are masculine characteristics that we have to cultivate, feminine characteristics we have to cultivate.
Yeah. So from what you can see, it looks like it's just kind of acknowledging that these issues are out there and the church is
and giving some guidance,
paying attention, and wants to weigh in on it.
Yeah,
right?
Giving some guidance, that kind of thing. I do say I constantly recommend we have to get back to the tradition. You have to know the catechism. You have to know the catechism on infallible teachings.
Yeah.
What is infallibly taught, what is not, what is infallibly condemned, what is not, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
And for that, you kind of need some older texts, frankly.
Right. I mean, the time of just absolutely being aware of what the Catholic Church teaches in her fullness is really important, isn't it?
Yes. That's why I'm writing that book. Sorry, self-plugged, but we haven't mentioned that in a while. But we have to. People are so confused. They did basics.
Yeah. All right.
What's happening?
Sometime when you finish the book, and I've been kind of
20 years from now, after the scandals are gone and the era of peace is here.
All right. So that's, anyways. Well, thanks for that summary of that. And again, this is GRN Alive. I forgot to mention Diane Xavier is here, and she's running our social media. If you want to go to Facebook or YouTube or Twitter, we also have Sam Cavanna, our intern, is here with us, and so we appreciate him getting up early and being with us today as well. Phone number is 877-757-9424 if you have any questions. So let us move on and speak with our friend Jonathan St. He's founder, president of Texas Values. Their website is txvalues.org, and Jonathan is an attorney himself, and their mission is to preserve and advance a culture of family values in the state of Texas, but the issues that they deal with are not exclusive to Texas. I mean, anywhere you're listening, these issues are going to be important, and we're going to talk primarily about 3 Supreme Court cases, 1 past and 2 future, on the program this morning. Jonathan St., good morning. How are you?
Dave, good morning. I'm good.
All right. And you got Dr. Chris Malloy here and Sissel, and so we got the whole team here. But thanks for joining us. Let's talk, first of all, about, this is Religious Freedom Week. I don't know if you knew that or not, but the U.S. Supreme Court recently ruled that the 1964 Civil Rights Act now protects gay, lesbian, transgender employees from discrimination based on sex. Tell us about that and why it might be problematic for Catholic Christians.
Well, the Bostic decision, as the main name of the case is being called, was about almost 2 weeks ago. And what happened was the U.S. Supreme Court has ruled that the Civil Rights Act of 1964 is redefined sex to include sexual orientation and gender identity. And I use the word redefine because that's really what the court did. Congress has been asked numerous times, state legislatures, including Texas, where I live and work primarily, have been asked to redefine sex to include the word sexual orientation, gender identity, and they refused to at the state level. And so the only reason this is happening is because 6 judges on the court, they decided to act as legislators, which is not their role, and redefine a word. But it's going to create chaos, and it already has. And these issues come up because, and particularly for Christians and people, Catholics that, talking about the subject you were just talking about, right, where there's biblical beliefs about the issues of male and female and sex, and those are biological as well. And so, but people have been trying to use these type of changes in the law to punish people of faith. And just to give you a couple of examples of how some of this might play out if this is applied. In the court case, applies to employment settings. But once you redefine that word in one area of federal law or in such an important law like the 1964 Civil Rights Act, which is in Title VII, you've got to expect they're going to try to push that in other areas of law as well. But when you do that, now you have people that are going to be pushing this in different areas at the state and federal level, and they're going to attack people of faith on these issues. We see this playing out a lot in sports right now, where young women particularly, are having to now compete against biological boys and men in a lot of competitive athletics, a lot of times at the amateur level, at the collegiate level, and sometimes at the professional level. And they're very concerned. They're losing spots. They're losing competitions. And there are lawsuits now on this issue. Idaho just passed a law on this issue. And so, but you're also going to see it in the settings as it relates to religious entities. Now, there is some discussion that that the religious liberty protections we have should continue to be there for us, but it wasn't very clear in the opinion that that's something that we could rely on, nor could you expect the other side to just acknowledge that. And so that means churches and religious nonprofits and ministries are going to have to deal with these issues. We've seen it play out in women's shelters, where you have biological men who believe their gender identity themselves. They've decided they're a woman and they want to be admitted to a women's shelter. For businesses, because this isn't an employment case, we see cases already where you have employees, that want to go through a sex change operation, and they want the employer to pay for it. And if they don't, they're going to file a lawsuit. They already have, and they want the law to apply in those type of settings. And so, in addition to the issue of free speech, we know sometimes people that change their gender identity, they want to, instead of being called he, they want to be called she. The whole issue of misgendering, those are already coming up in lawsuits. People have already been fired and lost their job for calling someone by the, misgendering as it's called, calling them by the wrong pronoun. These are real problems and chaos that's going to be created by this type of decision. But here's the thing. Congress could act on this and say, you know what, this has gone too far. As Justice Alito said in the dissent, essentially, that this was not the proper role of the court to redefine a word, and Congress could take action on this. And we're hearing a lot of legislators at the federal level express concern, but we'll have to see what happens. But that's something we're telling our people in Texas, and we'd love for people across the country to contact their congressman and say, we don't agree with this decision, and we know you can do something about it.
So can a Democrat-dominated House, are they going to do anything about it?
Well, look, I mean, it's certainly notable that the numbers don't seem to be the numbers you'd need as far as Republican and Democrat to move something like this. As a matter of fact, Nancy Pelosi tried to push through a bill last week called the Equality Act that has not been able to pass the House and Senate together. She tried to bring it up, and it's worse than this decision. I mean, the answer to your question right now is probably not. But, don't underestimate the power of the American people and constituent if they complain or not. But I think the reality is those numbers don't look very likely for now. We obviously have big elections coming up this year in November, and so I think it's very important for people to think about that when they go vote. But it is important to note, last week Nancy Pelosi brought up an issue, a bill, and this bill had no religious liberty protections. it would have changed the law on sexual orientation, gender identity, and no religious entity would be able to say, well, that violates our beliefs. And I don't even think that it would have allowed churches to make that defense.
Jonathan Saenz joining us from Texas Values. txvalues.org is his website. A lot of great information there, and you can learn more about them and support them if you'd like. It seems like a Pandora's box, especially with precedents and where this could go. Because if you can define your sex, you could seemingly, people say define your age, define your species, and I don't know. This seems really problematic in many ways.
So, are there, with regard to the religious liberty protection, what's the difference? I guess two questions in light of that. What's the difference for a school? You got a little Catholic school. What's their status? And then you've got a Catholic church, a parish, where the pastor says, no, you're not, you're a man and you're a man. I'm not marrying you. What do you think about those two different issues? How protected are they?
Yeah. And let me say one thing, too. We are a state-based group, but we have organizations across the country. We're part of the Family Policy Council Network. There are 40 other states that have groups like us. And so we encourage people, whatever state you're in, contact your local family policy council, get connected with them on these type of issues. Our work in Texas is at txvalues.org. But, look, that's a valid question, and people are going to continue to ask it because we've already seen litigation on these type of issues. As a matter of fact, the U.S. Supreme Court is going to have a ruling, and it relates to Catholic schools, I believe, out of California later by Tuesday. They're going to finish up their work for the year. The U.S. Supreme Court is, and they're going to say something about what's called a ministerial exception. And so, our view would be, look, whether it's the church or it's also it's a Catholic church or a Catholic school, there really shouldn't be a difference. But you're likely to see a little bit more pressure on the school because people think that there should be a difference, but there shouldn't. But you could see that happening whether it's someone that's a woman that wants to be a priest, or that someone that's having issues with their sexuality and they want to act it out more. It doesn't have to be a female. It could be a male priest in the Catholic church, someone at the Catholic school who is, engaging in a lot of discussion and showing that they don't follow biblical beliefs on these issues. And the Catholic school says this doesn't match up with our beliefs and our vision in our church. And so, that person wouldn't be a good fit to continue to work there. And so that's where we're already seeing cases come up. And so, I think those religious liberty protections for the Catholic church and schools should be just as strong. But there's a Supreme Court decision coming up that could give us an indication of what this court thinks about it. But look, the Supreme Court it should not be the final word on these issues. We shouldn't have to think, oh, well, then there's nothing else we can do. There absolutely is more that we can do. That's why you've got Congress, you've got the legislative branch, the executive branch. And so I think the more we think less of that, but it is important to know that they did make a pretty big decision that could impact us.
Huge.
Hey, Jonathan, let me. We just have a few minutes remaining, unfortunately. But you mentioned there a moment about the ministerial exception. I know that's one case that's coming up here by the end of June, and there's also a big abortion-related case as well. Could you briefly give our listeners a little preview of what's going to be coming down the line next week from the Supreme Court?
Yeah. Well, and absolutely. And that allows me to tell people, too, the work we do, like other family policy councils, we do work on religious liberty, on marriage and family, and pro-life issues. We're the largest organization in Texas that does that nonprofit work. And so we've been involved in this case. June Medical case is the name of it. It's out of Louisiana, and it's up at the U.S. Supreme Court, and it deals with common sense health and safety standards for abortion centers. Look, I'm pro-life. I know y'all are, too. We don't support abortion. But we think there could at least be some common ground with others that if some of these abortion facilities are going to be open, they should have to follow the same medical and health and safety standards as other medical facilities. And that's what this case is about. It's about making sure that doctors have admitting privileges at a hospital. That way, if something goes wrong with the woman at the clinic, and we know women die sometimes at abortion clinics, it's awful, but that they should have admitting privileges so they could quickly go to a hospital so a woman can get care. That's primarily what this case is about out of Louisiana. We had a similar law like it in Texas, and portions of it got struck down. So we're hoping this case now with some different judges, we'll see a different outcome. But it has implications for the pro-life issue across the country. We'll get an idea what these new two judges think about how these issues should be decided. And so we filed a brief at the U.S. Supreme Court, or we joined a brief at the U.S. Supreme Court on this issue. We're hoping for victory. And, that's just a little bit of part of the work we do in a lot of great organizations like ours across the country.
Yeah, you mentioned the new justices. We got a lot of wild card justices on the bench right now, don't we? I mean, you just don't know what's going to happen. It keeps things very interesting, and sometimes that's not a good thing, is it?
Roberts is such a disappointment.
Yeah. And then you got Gorsuch wrote the decision for the one on
another one.
Yeah, Jonathan. Just a minute remaining. Have you said all you wanted to say about the ministerial exception, or do you want to say anything additional about that?
Yeah, well, look, and I mean, some of that stuff on the ministerial exception, in that case does not apply to some of the issues that we're discussing specifically, but it's about a legal standard. And so when you see religious liberty cases coming up, the facts do matter, but it also matters what is the court saying. What is the type of respect that they're going to give to religious liberty? And unfortunately, there is more and more people don't see the line anymore, whether it ever existed to extent of that the churches are private. There is a limit to what government can do and force them to do, and we're just seeing more attacks on that. And a lot of it does deal with these issues that we're talking about of sexuality, issues related to life. And so, and that's important for people to see that. And that's why we fight to protect religious liberty at all different levels, but particularly when it relates to the churches. We're seeing a lot of that discussion right now with these coronavirus restrictions and others, and churches trying to grapple with what the government's telling people to do, even churches. And so the more that we can have strong religious liberty protection, and that doesn't mean everything. That doesn't mean these issues go away, but that at least that there's one front that we might be able to have a bit stronger protection on as we deal with it in other settings in our life, privately or publicly. We should all be able to agree that the churches historically have always had these rights to have these type of values and their biblical beliefs, and we shouldn't have the government. And that's what these are. These court cases are coming from government laws or people trying to force the government to redefine certain terms and concepts so they can punish the church and force Christians to believe how they do, or they end up in jail, or they end up in a fine, or they lose their business. Well, Jonathan, so we're going to keep fighting against that at txvalues.org.
All right, that's what I was just going to say. We're glad you're out there. We're glad for the work that you do, and thanks so much for being on the program with us. Keep up the good fight. I've always described Jonathan. He's a fighter. You can tell the guy's got some fire in his blood. So thank you so much, Jonathan Saenz, founder, president, Texas Values. Visit their website, txvalues.org. txvalues.org. Again, the issues that they fight for are universal, but he happens to be fighting in Texas. Thanks so much, Jonathan. Good to talk with you.
God bless you, gentlemen.
Thanks so
God
much.
Bless.
All right. That's a good conversation. This is GRN Live Friday edition. Phone number is 877-757-9424. When we come back, I'm going to introduce you to a woman I'm just meeting for the first time. She is in studio here with us, the Honorable Early Wiley. She is the criminal district attorney for Kaufman County, a little county, about 7,500 people in the city of Kaufman. And back in 2013, some horrific things happened in that county, and she was right in the middle of it. In fact, she's written a book called A Target on My Back, a prosecutor's terrifying tale of life on a hit list. She's a Catholic, she's a wife, she's a mother, and we're going to tell you her story of courage and bravery, and also talk about some of the issues in the news these days as well. When we come back, 877-757-9424. We'll be back with GRN Live Friday edition.
Solidarity HealthShare is rebuilding Catholic healthcare in America. We conform to the moral guidelines of the Catholic Church, so you never have to worry about your healthcare dollars paying for anything that violates your conscience. From conception to natural death, we strive to serve all healthcare needs, protect human life, celebrate families, and promote the dignity of all people. Join Solidarity HealthShare in restoring and rebuilding authentic Catholic healthcare by signing up at solidarityhealthshare.org, a sponsor of the Guadalupe Radio Network.
It's your mission, not just ours, so you also get the credit for it. We often receive feedback from listeners just like you about how this Catholic radio apostolate has deeply impacted their life. Among my personal favorites are the many testimonies from priests who have heard penitents in the confessional tell them that it was Catholic radio which helped to save their marriage or brought them back to the faith after decades. In a digital world, you have provided an invaluable resource to thousands of souls who can tune into your radio station anonymously. That means every day, through the GRN, you are casting wide the seeds of the Catholic faith, sharing the good, the true, and the beautiful to a world who is desperate to hear that message, a message of hope. Because the GRN is 100% listener funded, you get the credit, storing up treasure in heaven. Thank you for being fellow missionaries with the GRN.
The new and improved GRNonline.com is now available. Hi, Joe McLean here, and I am so excited. GRNonline.com just became so much better. Log on today. Enable location services so that you can find the local station information, the local program. Listen to your local GRN station right now. Get the podcast, events, and more. Plus, all of the network shows that you love the most. Again, GRNonline.com.
All right, we are back, and thank you for joining us. This is GRN Live Friday morning edition. It is now 30 minutes after the hour. We're glad you're with us, and really excited to introduce you to our next guest. And she brought her husband into the studio. We're not going to make him talk on the air, but he's here with us as well. A friend of mine, Olivia, who I know is listening, I was talking to her recently, and I just was talking, Dr. Malloy, about just the need for courage and the need for, sometimes we do feel like we have a target on our back in the culture today because, as Christians. And she said, have you heard of the district attorney in Kaufman County, Judge Wiley? And I, no. And she said, oh, she's wonderful, and she's a Catholic. And so I contacted her, and here she is on the air with us. And let me just give her a little bit more of a formal introduction. She is the former judge of the Kaufman County Court of Law, an adjunct professor at the University of North Texas, and a former supervising attorney for the Dallas County District Attorney's Office. I trust that's all still true, right?
That is all still true.
All right. Currently serving as the criminal district attorney of Kaufman County in North Texas. Now, before you know the background of that, you'll say, okay, well, there's a lot of, criminal district attorneys.
There are a lot.
There's, that's a nice job, but what's the big deal with that, right? Well, she's also written a book called A Target on My Back, A Prosecutor's Terrifying Tale of Life on a Hit List. And so before we get into that, I want to spend, if we could, the first half just talking about what happened in 2013 in Kaufman County, the city of Kaufman, a little rural city in North Texas of 7,500 people, but made national news, and you were right in the thick of it. And we'll kind of give a timeline here in a moment. But Cradle Catholic, been Catholic your entire life?
Catholic my whole life. Good morning. It's glad I'm here. Thank you for having me here, Dave. And Dr. Malloy, am I saying that right?
Yeah.
Going to make sure. And I'm glad my husband's here listening. He'll correct me with a nod or something, or a head shake if I'm saying something wrong. Yes, born and raised in Kaufman County, St. Anne's Catholic Church in Kaufman. So as the criminal district attorney, even though Kaufman's a little town of 7,500, the county's really growing.
Yeah.
So just like everything that's growing outside of Dallas County, Kaufman County's growing as well.
Yeah.
Kaufman County is probably population 120,000, but by Dallas standards, that's still a very small place.
Yeah.
So we're just not used to having the kind of things that happened in Kaufman County. And in 2013, the elected district attorney was killed, but before that, one of the chief prosecutors were killed. And so that was an eye-catching news story around the state, the nation, and the country. We just don't have people that are killed that are doing their job as prosecutors. And I can't go without mentioning the fact that when Mike, the elected district attorney, was killed, it was in his home, and his wife was there, Cynthia. So that was 3 people within 2 months in 2013 from January, March, and 2013. I was appointed by then Governor Perry to be the criminal district attorney in Kaufman. Then I've been reelected since. Until we knew who the killer was, we didn't know. And so obviously the eye-grabbing catch was on a killer's hit list, because ultimately found out that the killer at the time also wanted to kill me, as he was wanting to take out people that he perceived to be his enemies. And I was one of those people in the job I had as a judge at the time.
Yeah.
So...
And you took on the job as DA in, was it April of 2013?
Yes.
So, I mean, right in the midst of it. And I'm thinking, okay, January, Mark Hasse, is that how I pronounce his name, was
you
killed.
Absolutely said it correctly.
April 18th, it was, March 30th, the Kaufman County District Attorney, Michael McClelland, and his wife killed.
Yes.
So now unfortunately, there's a job opening, and who wants that job?
I did.
And you step in with a target. I mean, that
is that twice that would be twice the target, right? So you were already as judge.
Right.
You were.
But you're catching Dr. Malloy. The point is the position was vulnerable in the sense that at that time, people were getting killed and we didn't know what was going on, but there was that vacancy. And so when the governor appointed me, that would have been the one. But you did point out the second was, as the case went on, the prosecution of the murderer went on, it became that there was a hit list. And on that hit list, one of the people that he wanted to kill was me, along with some other people that he had created in his mind had done him wrong.
Yeah. You know, you're educated, you've got experience, you've worked in Dallas, you could have gone off and taken a job in Oregon or Florida or New York and just gotten the heck out of Kaufman County. Why was it important for you to stay, especially under those circumstances?
Kaufman County is my home. You don't leave your home.
Yeah.
So you know that if something's wrong, somebody needs to stand up and take a position. And at that time, it's hard to remember if you take yourself back. We have a limited time on the radio.
Yeah.
And just imagine what it's like that people you know, that you work with, that are going to do their job, and they get killed.
Mm-hmm.
And what ends up happening is people, for good reasons, they are fearful.
Yeah.
But what I decided was this was a job that I believed I could do. I knew the people in Kaufman County. They're good people. I was from Kaufman County. And if I knew what to do, which I had the experience in Dallas, I'd also been on the bench for 10 years, I was going to step up and I was going to take the job if the governor so wanted to appoint me because it was the right thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
You can't be fearful. You can't let people, I mean, really, what is that? I mean, he's a murderer, but he's really a bully.
Yeah.
He's saying, I didn't accept the punishment that happened to me. I'm going to take vigilante justice.
Mm-hmm.
We can't have that.
Yeah. How did, if I were, your husband's here, I told him I wouldn't bring him on, but how did your family, because you've got, is it boys?
I have two boys,
and
they
you
were
got a
home
husband,
then.
and of course they're involved whether they like it or not because their mother and wife is the DA and all this craziness going on. How was it from a family perspective and also from a faith perspective? How did you handle it?
From a family perspective, it was tense. I mean, the boys at first, it was, I guess, would the word be cool that you had Homeland Security because of what was happened. Our then Sheriff David Burns, made sure that everyone that was a target, and we didn't know how much of a target, really, as doctors pointed out, that they had a security team. So we had security teams. So in our home, we had a security team. And I have to always say that Homeland Security were amazing in our home, very respectful, but kept us safe until they had figured out who was the murderer. So from a family perspective, the family, we had a protective detail. My husband always had an idea who the murderer was. That makes him seem like he's smart. And
he looks smart.
He's smart, but he always was saying that this was a possibility. Sometimes it's outside of the mind. But as far as your faith, and it's something you have to think about, you have to still your heart. God is in charge.
Mm-hmm.
He's in charge at the darkest hour.
Yeah.
And I had the faith that he was going to carry me through this.
Yeah.
And he did. So I was right about that.
Yeah.
Because he was right. And so I knew that. I knew that.
We need more leaders like you.
I don't know about that, but I just think that we can't be afraid because isn't that what happens?
Yeah.
And then the mob sets in your heart and you think you can go along and you can't. You can't do that.
Well, this is the thing. We just want to raise our own families, but we can't do that anymore because if people aren't stepping into the breach like you're doing, then everything's going to collapse.
Well, but how can we? And I agree. We agree. We can't raise our own family in chaos. We think we can hide under our kitchen tabletops and in our homes, but it's coming. And of course, at the time, which is interesting in the story, it ended up being a lone killer with the co-defendant or the accomplice, as we would say in television, but criminally, the co-defendant is his wife. So it was more of a lone. But the thought was, is this something bigger? Because at one point we thought, is it the Aryan Brothers, which a lot of people know that's a racist organization? Is it the Mexican cartel? And so all those were thoughts. So, what are you going to do if this large organization that's coming in, that's taking out law enforcement? And for some reason, they started with Kaufman County because of Mark Hassey's prior work experience, having prosecuted one of these people. And so that was, like you're saying, it was a larger group. And my decision with my husband in prayer was that we were not going to be afraid.
Yeah.
And he stood by me.
And that's really one of the big reasons. I think the story itself is fascinating. If you're just tuning in, my guest is the Honorable Early Wiley. She serves as the Criminal District Attorney of Kaufman County in North Texas. Her book is called A Target on My Back, A Prosecutor's Terrifying Tale of Life on a Hit List. And I want to talk about what's going on in the country right now. A lot of people, your job is to put the bad guys and ladies in jail and prosecute and be fair and all that. And we've seen, I guess, what you can only describe as lawlessness that's going on in our culture today. So I want to go back. You're an African-American female, so I want to just say that because the catalyst was back on May 25th with the killing of George Floyd. And your thoughts on that, and then we can talk about the aftermath and some of the lawlessness that has resulted from that. So what was your reaction when you saw that video?
I believe, David, would be the same reaction you had. Yeah. And everyone, maybe the law enforcement part of my brain might have kicked in. But as a human being, what we saw was a person being tortured, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't affecting an arrest. They were being tortured to death. And the reason we used this word, and my husband and I have talked about it, George Floyd had complied with the police officer. So it wasn't affecting an arrest. He had complied. He had him down. So your mind, you think as a prosecutor, what's the purpose once you come in contact with a suspect is to have that suspect and yourself safely into custody. And we say detained. He was. Everything that happened after the detention was inhumane. So we all agree that should have been a unifying moment for this country, because whoever didn't agree with that would be such an outlier that they wouldn't be relevant.
And I haven't heard anybody that disagrees with that.
Right.
Yeah. And so then what happened afterwards?
Well, we've seen it, the rioting, the protesting. And I said the rioting first and the protesting. I don't know which came first. I mean, the moral outrage is righteous. I mean, and taking to the streets in protest is righteous, but it has to be peaceful protesting.
Yeah.
And where I am and where people, I think, whatever their politics are, everyone wants people to respect the law. I think that there's different ways to govern, even in the criminal justice system. You've heard people say, let them let off steam. Okay, you can let people let off steam, but it doesn't go to the point where they destroy property. It doesn't go to the point where they injure people. You cross the line into, let's make it easy and quit saying lawlessness. You broke the law. You broke the law. These are laws on the book that we have agreed to as a society and have been enacted by duly elected office holders, either for the state or for the feds or local officials. And yet, in some places in this country, we have allowed people to commit criminal actions without consequences. How is that going to work out? It's not. I can tell you. I don't need to be a lawyer. It will not work. Whoever thinks it's a good idea, I'm telling you right now, wherever you are, whatever your politics are, it will not work. Is there a righteous place for discussion? Is there a need for reform with police? You bet.
My judge, my judge.
I'll be your judge.
Yeah, I don't live in the county, so you're not my judge. But Judge Early Wiley is my guest, and we want to open up the phone lines if you have a question. The broad topic is courage. I think she really defines it. Her book is called "A Target on My Back: A Prosecutor's Terrifying Tale of Life on a Hit List, and you can find that where books are sold. Our phone number is 877-757-9424, 877-757-9424.
So what are the fruits for these communities? I mean, Minnesota, I've heard, Seattle. What's going to happen? I mean, are they going to look like Detroit for 10, 15 years?
I've understood, and I'm following it, but at some point I cut the news off because it's negative. But you have to be informed, or because if you're not informed, then you can't have a good dialogue. So you have to get enough information to know what's happening. I believe some of the citizens, if I'm understanding correctly, in Seattle are bringing forth lawsuits against and those are civil actions. Obviously, they're bringing against the city for failing to step in and protect them. The first responsibility of government is to protect their citizens. That is the first function.
Right.
People can recreate what history is. They can. But the history of laws in the United States started with policing in New York City because we've tried this before. It's not like this is new.
Yeah.
We didn't have organized policing in this country until the middle century. And policing was not created to prosecute black people. It was created because of immigrants that were flooding into New York State and New York City harbor. So people don't even read history. They make it up. And the rest of us are like sheep and we say nothing.
Yeah.
So we know where we got policing. Policing came from London because we base our society on British and their rules. And so if we want to change this discussion, let's at least agree to what the history is.
Yeah.
One of the craziest things that I think has come out of all this, you talk about reform, and I think a lot of people are saying, yeah, there should be some reform, and you got to weed out the bad ones. And, there's bad cops, like there are bad dentists and bad doctors and bad radio hosts. So I hope I'm not one of them. But defunding police departments? I mean, they've already voted on that in Minneapolis, right?
That's correct.
And, that's what this Chaz or Chop or whatever the autonomous people out there in Seattle want. It seems like that in the Second Amendment, you take those away, and boy, you've got just anarchy and lawlessness, don't you?
You do, but let's understand some things, and I want to be clear because I don't want to minimize. A bad cop is not like being a bad radio host. If I'm a bad radio host or a bad dentist, I mess up teeth and I give people a boring 2 or 3 hours. If you're a bad cop, you can kill people.
Yeah.
So let's not do parity because it's different, and that's where, again, in my opinion, that's again where we lose people that we're trying to come to agreement with. So that's where the reform comes. You don't have to reform bad dentistry. People won't come to the dentist office if that word gets out. People don't have a choice with bad policing. So let's not put it on parity. There's a distinction. And we want to respect the fact that there's bad policing and we need to reform that. And that's not running your show. That's a conversation for another day.
Yeah.
The autonomous people are not autonomous because people live, what they're saying is, you can't govern me. I've decided that you can't tell me that I have to follow the rules that the duly elected officials that the rest of the whole community, that county, that state, have followed. I don't. I get to choose. No one gets to do that. That's called anarchy.
Yeah.
If we allow those people to do that, we're losing civilization. And when you say, that's why I said they're not autonomous, because for other people that want to walk down the street, they're not allowing them. So they're operating the way they want, but it affects other people. If we could put them on an island and ship them in the middle, that's truly autonomous. These people affect everybody that's around them, people that have businesses, people that want to walk to their apartments and homes that live in downtown Seattle. Those people affect people. And unless I've, fallen and hit my head, with the Second Amendment, they're not changing the Second Amendment. There are ways to ratify amendments and to repeal them. And so the Second Amendment juxtaposition up against this is making people, I think, all over this country appreciate the Second Amendment. And I believe if you looked in the news, gun sales are definitely going up.
Oh, I have a good friend who's a pawn shop owner, and he said it's crazy right now. I mean, gun sales, ammunition sales, 2 million new first-time gun owners this year alone. 877-757-9424. Let's, since we're talking about all the controversial topics, let's go ahead and bring up the next one. Black Lives Matter has a website, and of course the Black Lives Matter signs and hashtags are very common, the black box and everything. And they, on their official website, they said, we're committed to struggling together and to imagining and creating a world free of anti-blackness where every black person has the social, economic, and political power to thrive. I think we're all on board there. I think that's
I'm
great.
on board.
Okay, we disrupt the Western prescribed nuclear family structure requirement. We free ourselves from the tight grip of heteronormative thinking. We dismantle cisgender privilege. So your thoughts on this organization as opposed to the phrase Black Lives Matter, which I don't think anybody's going to disagree with. And also, if you could, the statistics that I see, and you probably are more privy to these, it doesn't seem like, as far as police officers killing unarmed black men or women for that matter, which is always going to be a horrible thing, it doesn't seem like the numbers statistically are there to say that there is a case against a radical prejudice. Would you agree? And also just your comments on the Black Lives Matter itself.
Okay. I appreciate your distinction.
Yeah.
Black Lives Matter is something we all agree to. It as a slogan, as an axiom, as an objective that we all want to reach. The organization you read, probably the top paragraph, and there's even probably more details in it. But just take what you said about disrupt the nucleus family. Just take that right there. This Western creation and raise children in a village. As Catholics, marriage is a sacrament. So just right there, they really want to dismantle a sacrament of the church. Mm-hmm. And I always am puzzled with women who are about women rights. A woman gets more protection in a marriage than if you have a village. Mm. If you're married and you're in a sacramental marriage and you're raising your children. So this is something, we've had marriage around for years. I mean, when we've had our discussion this morning, how the Supreme Court has expanded it, this conversation is not for that. I'm talking in the context of my faith. Yes. I'm not disagreeing with the Supreme Court decision. That train's left the station. But in our church and in our faith, that organization is saying to Catholics, what your sacrament is, we don't agree with. Mm-hmm. That should have every Catholic saying, can't support this organization. Yeah. They need to get off their recliners and say, can't support that. When you break down the nucleus family of any society, you have lost your society. Mm-hmm. If parents don't get to raise their children in the village, we know who the village is. The village is the government. Do not be fooled. It's not this fictional, great, a bunch of women patting up on the kid and telling them how great they are and high-fiving them. The village is the government telling you what to do with your kids. Yeah. Black Lives Matter makes it sound like some wonderful, like the way it used to be in some time far away, like, Simba. It's a joke. Mm-hmm. Don't get lulled into that because they want you to think that what we're doing doesn't work. This has worked. Families, it works.
Yeah. The founders of that movement are Marxists.
Of course.
Yeah. Self-identified.
And it's hard for me to get my head around what do they do? What's their end game? Like, is it Marxism? Is it, this like freedom of sexual expression?
I think
both?
That's part of it, right?
Yeah.
Because it talks about it uses, heteroneutral. Cisgender. So here's the thing, Doctor. Why not, if I'm planning a case and I'm trying to figure out, because I'm the prosecution, I'm the moving on a case, and I'm trying to defend something, we have to think, first you have to take people at their word. If someone tells me that they're a Marxist and I'm a capitalist, then they're the antithesis of what I am. So we have to take them at their word. And Marxists, at some point, if this continues to go, everything that we've been raised with, everything that we want for our children and our grandchildren will change. Mm-hmm. There won't be savings. There won't be a middle class. It's going to be the government, and it's going to be the people that aren't in the government.
Right.
And when they change, there will be leaders. We saw a microcosm in Seattle.
Right.
They didn't just abdicate downtown. They had leaders, they had guns, and they had control. And that is our microcosm of what they want to do larger. So you don't have to guess what they want. They want to take what they saw and what we saw happening in Seattle and they want to do that larger.
Mm-hmm. And they've already tried. They tried in D.C. to form a little autonomous group, and it got broken up, and this is where law enforcement comes in, right?
Right.
I think they've tried in other pockets, and so if it's successful in Seattle, it's going to spread. This isn't a small movement. It's a frightening movement. Judge Wiley, we only have a few minutes remaining. I wanted to just ask you, because like we said at the beginning, I think you're a model of somebody who has lived a life of courage, a person who obviously takes their faith very seriously. What's your advice to the person out there who's listening, who's in a sense feels like they have a target on their back? They feel like they see the forces kind of coming down on us, and it's scary. As somebody who has lived and faced fear and even potential death, what's your advice to our listeners?
First, I'd say pray. Yeah. Prayer works. We know it works. So don't let that dissuade you because of all the negativity. Part of this sheltering in place is that we separate a little from our faith of meeting with other faithful people. I mean, even though we're here, obviously, and we listen on the radio and on the television, but pray and pray with specificity. Pray for wisdom and discernment. Individually, your family, speak up. Mm-hmm. This is still America. Yeah. We are still free. We still have First Amendment rights to speak. And just because I speak something that someone else doesn't agree with, it doesn't mean that you're wrong. This is back to everything we learned in elementary school. Yeah. There are bullies. They're the same. They're a bigger group. They're bigger than the murder that we had in Kaufman, but it's the same mindset. I will not follow those rules. These people, I will not follow the rules. Are there some well-intended people in that group? Are there some people that want some reform? Yes, but they're getting swept up. So for us at home, pray, speak up, talk to like-minded people, but talk to people that you don't agree with. Mm-hmm. Find where you have common ground. But remember that the rule of law protects everybody in this country.
Yeah.
The wealthy will always have security.
Yeah.
But for the rest of us, without a reformed or a police department, we will not be able to be safe, and our children will not either.
Yeah, thank you. The book is called A Target on My Back, A Prosecutor's Terrifying Tale of Life in a Hit List. Do they just go to the regular places?
Go to the regular places, absolutely.
You got your own website or anything? Or?
I don't have a website. I am on Facebook, but I'm on Facebook because I'm an elected official. I came late to the game, but I don't have a website, but they can get the book on Amazon. I'd love for them to read it. Welcome to come to Facebook. We can have a dialoog or something like that.
Yeah.
It's great.
I bet earlywiley.com is available.
There are not a lot of early Wileys there. I probably could get
Yeah, DavePalmer.com, not so much.
Not so much.
Thank you so much for being here. It's you've got such a strong voice of clarity, and I know our listeners are blessed to hear about you. And that's the music playing. You're going to hang around for about 15 minutes in the after show. And so we'll talk a little bit more off the radio and on the social media platforms. So thanks, everybody. Thanks, Sissel and Dr. Malloy and Chris.
Thank you, Judge.
And we'll see you on social media here in a few minutes. Thanks for listening. God bless you. Have a great rest of your weekend.
Thank you for listening to GRN Alive.
From the studios of the Guadalupe Radio Network.
For more faith, fun, and facts,
join our email list.
Just text the letters GRN to the number 42828. That's GRN to the number 42828.
And may your Friday be filled with the joy of the Lord.
Blessed be God, blessed be His holy name, blessed be Jesus Christ, true God and true man, blessed be the name of Jesus, blessed be His most sacred heart, blessed be His most precious blood. Blessed be Jesus in the most holy sacrament of the altar. Blessed be the Holy Spirit, the Paraclete. Blessed be the great Mother of God, Mary most holy. Blessed be her holy and immaculate conception. Blessed be her glorious assumption. Blessed be the name of Mary, Virgin and Mother. Blessed be Saint Joseph, her most chaste spouse. Blessed be God in his angels and in his saints. Amen.
KATH 910 AM, Frisco, Dallas, Fort Worth.
With your EWTN Newslink, I'm Brian Patrick. An iconic Southern California mission and its neighboring church moved two outdoor statues of St. Junipero Serra indoors. Protesters have been toppling statues of St. Sarah statewide. The Diocese of Orange says Mission San Juan Capistrano and the nearby Basilica moved the statues out of precaution. The Vatican's new directory for catechesis, released Thursday, addresses bioethics, gender identity, and biological sex. The revised 300-page directory says the new scientific developments must remain respectful of the creative will of God and human dignity. The IRS wants relatives of deceased people who receive COVID-19 relief checks from the federal government to pay that money back. A government watchdog says more than 1 million relief payments went to dead people. For more news from a Catholic perspective.
All right, welcome back. And this is the after show of GRN Alive. And we're glad that you are hanging with us. We had a very spirited and interesting conversation during the radio portion of the broadcast. We had Jonathan Saenz on talking about the Supreme Court. And then the second half of this show, we had the Honorable Early Wiley, who currently serves as the criminal DA of Kaufman County in North Texas. And I mentioned during the show that her husband, Aaron Wiley, wasn't going to drag him on the air, but I'm going to drag him on the after show because he said he wouldn't mind talking. And just as a brief rundown of the timeline, back in 2013, two prosecutors and a prosecutor's wife were murdered in Kaufman County, Texas. And the case did gain national attention. And in January of 2013, Mark Hasse, who was the chief assistant district attorney, was killed in plain sight walking to work. And then in March of that year, it was criminal district attorney Michael McClelland and his wife Cynthia were found dead in their home. They had been killed in a home invasion assault case. Eric Lau Williams and his wife were arrested for the murders, and he was later convicted. And then it was Judge Wiley who, in April of that year, decides, I'm not leaving Kaufman County, and so she takes on the job. And so she's here, and also her husband, Aaron, is here as well. So we kind of got your perspective, and I wanted to get your perspective because you're an attorney yourself. You're the husband of this woman who's literally on a hit list. You've got two sons you're protecting. They were young at the time, I know. What was going through your life and your mind at that time, Aaron?
Well, at that time, I was still with the United States Attorney's Office. I was a federal prosecutor. And so at some level, I had some information that, at least initially, was not public information. And that was that initially they thought it was the Aryan Brotherhood. And they thought so because of some connections and some press releases that were made by our office and a shout out, for lack of a better word, to Mike Hasse. Within a couple of days, Mike Hasse was killed. And so from a federal perspective, they thought that, along with a letter that had been intercepted from the Aryan Brotherhood by DPS that talked about that the race war was going to start. This was in December of that year. That the race war was going to start and that they were going to start taking out law enforcement officials. So you put those two things together, and they really thought that it was the Aryan Brotherhood. That reached actually the desk of Eric Holder at the time, who was our Attorney General back then, and it was a priority. When the first murder happened, there was a rush, for lack of a better word. However, just like with any other criminal investigation, as things started to come up empty, because they really didn't have anything for about a month and a half, When the second murders happened, that's when we all got protection. I was on my wife from the beginning that you need to worry about this. You need to really protect yourself. You need to be carrying your gun. Of course, I'm a husband. She doesn't listen. None of that happened.
Yeah.
Until the second murder happened.
So you weren't, Judge Wiley, you weren't concerned enough to be overly concerned where three people have died in a small county.
I was concerned. Aaron is pointing out that after Mark was killed, and he just needs to go ahead and say it, that the suspect that you named in the press release there that you read,
Eric Williams. Yeah.
Eric Williams, that Aaron had the idea that he was a suspect, that he was a viable suspect. And so did law enforcement. I mean, they had reasons why the attention turned away from him. But everybody, I mean, again, I've mentioned the sheriff's name before. They all had him as a suspect. What my husband, I think, is saying as a finer point is that guy really doesn't like you, wife, or Lee, because of some prior history that y'all have had when you were on the bench.
Yeah.
So, eyes open, you need to recognize if I'm right that this guy is the suspect, he's not happy with you either.
Yeah.
And that's what he said on a finer point. And I don't mind saying he was right. Later we found out that after he did kill the second and third people, which is horrible, the McClellans, it became clear that he also wanted to kill other people because he had started going down the list of people that he wanted to kill. It might have been a figurative list, and that information came from his wife, who was the co-defendant or accomplice in the case.
Yes. And Eric Williams at the time had been convicted of burglary and theft while in office, and this is while he was bitter. And you testified against him in his trial. Was that the murder trial or the original trial? Or
that was the murder trial because the burglary and the theft of the property happened in the administration of Mike McClellan.
Okay.
And so in Mark and Mike preparing for that case, the people that were killed, the history that I had with Eric, we discussed it, but the decision was made by the prosecution. It wasn't relevant. Frankly, the fact that you had an attorney that was angry at the then judge about a fight over the way he did his pay sheets, it was too ridiculous to think that this guy would have any motive to want to kill anybody. So since nothing had happened besides the burglary, that evidence wasn't used. After he killed the three people, and as they went through a trial, you've heard the term discovery, and they found out the other evidence from his, I believe it was his wife, who testified. She said that, yes, Early was on the hit list, and I testified in the punishment of the capital murder trial about the future danger of other people that he wanted to kill.
Okay. I sometimes wonder, even around the dinner table, because my wife and I have children, 15, 11, and 7, and, how much do we talk about what's going on? And I didn't want them to see the graphic, riots and things that are going on, and even the toppling of statues can be kind of disturbing. And I'm just wondering, with your sons, how much of this did they know? How did you handle it? You having two innocent, boys.
They knew about it. They knew about it because, as Early was saying a little while ago, we had armed agents living with us. They had machine guns. They had guns. They camped out at our table. We had motion detectors all around our house.
Living in your house?
Yes.
After the third murder. After the third. But I think what Dave is actually asking, which is another good thought, is as it was happening, you're right, we didn't discuss it with the kids as your mom might be in danger. That discussion, because you don't want the kids to be fearful, and it wasn't a discussion like, well, he's not going to like some of the things you did as a judge.
Yeah.
It wasn't until it became so clear that we had 3 people killed within 60 days, we didn't have a suspect, everybody that was a potential, it wasn't just me, it was other elected officials, it was other judges, other people that they thought, whoever these people that were killing, and they didn't know it was Eric for sure, who else would they maybe go? So it was trying to figure out in the mind of a person that's a murderer, who would they go after next? Because in the back of everyone's mind is, Why are they trying to topple? If it's the Aryan Brotherhood, at some point someone said the Mexican cartel. Why are they picking on, like you're saying, this obscure little county that is right outside of Dallas, east of Dallas, and what's going on there?
Yeah, seems kind of random.
Seems very random.
Yeah.
So as most things happen with crime, you go with the suspects that make sense. So after eliminating, spend a lot of time and man hours because people are giving you tips and calls, and you've got, as Aaron called it, a shout out. It was a press release from the U.S. Attorney's Office thanking Mark Cassie. That's what he meant. That after that's like, okay, and then you had the letter that was intercepted. Well, maybe this is the Aryan Brotherhood. But as you eliminated them and you eliminated this cartel talk, then it just came back to who has motive. And then you see the three commonalities. Cynthia was killed, and I always just because she loved her husband was home. But why would anybody want to kill Mike and Mark? What are the commonalities with them?
Yeah. I want to ask you about, race relations and things like that. We talked a little bit about Black Lives Matter, and when all this blew up and Black Lives Matter and all that, I've had a lot of conversations with friends of mine, mostly, Caucasian, and we're just like, we're not racist. We all are infected by original sin, and none of us are perfect, and we may have some little subtle prejudices, and I think we all do. But I just wonder what your thoughts are on just maybe the healing process in this nation, because obviously we have a history of slavery, there's certainly been injustices, and nobody denies that, and there's certainly been some egregious things that have happened at the hands of police officers. Well, what's your advice as far as just the healing process, and is it even possible at this point to heal this nation? Well, Aaron, do you want to dive in on that?
Sure, it's possible to heal. I mean, to be intellectually honest, before you talk about the plank, the speck in somebody else's eye, you've got to pull the plank out of your own eye.
Mm-hmm.
You can't just come to that as if there's only blame on one side.
Yeah.
You talked about, it's interesting that in Black Lives Matter, they talk about families and dissolution of the family. A lot of the anger that comes about for young men of color is and has its roots in the lack of father figures at home. Because father figures are what put a tap on the testosterone. Without that, you kind of just run wild.
Yeah.
And the first time that you're coming across someone that's going to try and put authority over you is in a courtroom in front of my wife or judge like that, or in front of police officers at the side of the road.
Yeah.
And rather than come under that authority and be polite, they're still aggressive.
Yeah.
That is something that exists in a community that has more than 70% of folks born out of wedlock that don't have fathers around. The secondary part is if you're rioting in the streets and you're upset about things and you'll consider anything, tearing down statues, all the rest of that, why not consider getting more education?
Yeah.
Why not consider confronting the teachers' unions that are having substandard educations in your neighborhood?
Yeah.
That's really the path to success in this country. Anybody can get there. But if you put all of your eggs in being an entertainer, being an athlete, that's the genealogical lottery. I mean, if you're this tall, this fast, then maybe you'll get there.
Yeah. I remember, I think it was David Brown, the police chief, at the time of the murders of the police officers.
July
And
7th.
I remember him saying to the black community, please become officers.
Yes.
I mean, if you want to be
you want to
be part of the problem, make a difference. Become a police officer. I want to ask you because I want to respect your time, and we only have a couple of minutes. Obviously the rioters are not all African American. There's a lot of Caucasians and people of all ages, mostly young. And I want to ask if this comparison is good. I've thought about like the pro-life movement. We've been fighting the injustice of abortion for many, many, many years, and millions of lives lost. And we gather in downtown Dallas every January, in D.C., and in hundreds of thousands of people. And there's no rioting and there's no fighting, and the abortions continue, and it's horrible. But it's a slow, prayerful process of change, and minds are being changed. Is it a good comparison to say that change is happening in this country? I think we're much less, and you can tell me if you agree, much less better civil rights regards now than we were in the 1950s, 1960s. Is there an impatience of the things have to happen so fast now, and if it doesn't, we're going to set churches on fire? Is that a good comparison?
It is a I haven't thought about it, but it is a good comparison in this sense that this is not in that it's not happening that way. So if this was a real thoughtful, prayerful, led by some of the similar leaders we had in the 50s, think about it. Even though Martin Luther King was a Christian and Malcolm X wasn't, he was a man of faith. Mm-hmm. We have faithless people that are making about this movement. So it's not thoughtful. It's not that way. And so I don't believe that this movement is Dr. Malloy left, but is simply about the changing the black experience in this country. Mm-hmm. It's something bigger, and they want it to move fast and quick. And if we don't wake up to what's really going on, we could sit here, and I understand the dialogue that you're having, which is thoughtful among your own friends. And like you're saying, maybe it's stilted because I'm just talking to a bunch of white guys, and we're looking at each other going, we're not racist. You may not be racist, but even if you were, this has nothing to do with what they're doing. Mm-hmm. This has nothing to do with what they're doing. It's part of it. It's part of it because we saw a white officer torture and ultimately kill George Floyd. But that train has so left the station, and in less than 30 days, we have, that was right, May 25th. We're not even, what is it, more than, we have moved so far, so fast. Yeah. Where are we going next? Mm-hmm. So I think the conversation, obviously, what was happening in the 50s with Jim Crow, with segregation, something my parents were born into, their experiences that I've heard, that I was raised on, obviously we're not there. Are there people that have racism in them and somebody doesn't enjoy and people don't see them exactly as they see white people, and maybe you don't even understand that? Well, sure, that might be happening because some people might like tall people and some people might like women with dark hair, and some people have their preferences. As a friend explained to me, racism usually is based from the person that is discriminating against the other person, the inferiority that they feel because they have some kind of complex. Yeah. They have a problem. And it's not right that you've got people in authority that are making decisions. But what's happening in this country is we have to continue to do what you're doing with other people, just not me, about the dialogue and saying, okay, so what do we do next? Mm-hmm. What are we going to do next? And how are we going to continue the dialogue?
Yeah, very well said. Thank you. Well, I really appreciate you being here, and I told you we'd get you out here at 9:15, and it's 9:16, so I'm nothing but a despicable liar, aren't I? Sissel came in and didn't even say a word.
No, it's okay. I was talking to a lovely lady on the phone. So she's just talking about her love of the Bible. So. Oh,
okay. I was wondering what you're talking about in there.
We're talking about
and Aaron, thank you for being here. I want to grab a picture of y'all if I can before we close out. Sissel's got a show debuting today at noon called Young and Present.
Young Adults show for Young and Present, just talking about the challenges that young adults face because it's an interesting time of life. And my co-host and I are going to just go through those challenges and how to be present as a member of the Catholic Church today.
All right. Yeah. Very good. All right. Well, thanks so much. And thanks, everybody. Thanks to Dining Xavier. Does a great job on social media. And to all of our guests. And so y'all have a great rest of this wonderful feast day of St. Jose Maria Escriva and a great weekend as well. Thanks for listening. God bless you.
Y'all are awesome.
Wow, you guys are great guests. All right. Well, I'm glad you were happy with that's